Well, Kayleigh, thank you so much for sitting down and having this conversation. This is Kayleigh Waibel. She is a ministry leader in the Denver area. And about a year ago, probably, Kayleigh and I were sitting down having lunch and started talking about safe churches and how do we make our churches safer for kids. And it was so fun to hear Kayleigh's journey of really starting from scratch in a church. And what did that process look like? How do we go about that? And so Kayleigh has been willing to sit down with us today and just talk through basically the conversation we had and make it public because there's so many of us that are in churches that we're not starting with an ample robust safety plan, and so it can be intimidating and overwhelming. So we're just going to talk today about what this looked like in her context, and hopefully you can take some things and steal them and adapt them and make them work for your context. So Kayleigh, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did this come about? Why did this pique your interest? Why did this become a priority for you?
When I had first started in the church I was in, I did a pure walkthrough of our space, and there were like and I was a teacher for a little bit, like I had the teacher eyes and had also had teachers on my team who were like, check this check this out. And so when the first thing that really sparked the whole conversation for me was there are cubbies into this classroom that I can reach through from the outside getting into the inside. That's not quite safe. And so that kind of sparked for me the rest of the questions of like, how is our building safe? How do we create policies that keep our kids safe? How do we love our kids and our volunteers really well as they're working to keep kids safe, as they're entrusted with this big task, like this big holy task of keeping kids and families protected and also like physically safe in our building, and also while keeping them emotionally safe and spiritually growing. And so it really started for me with these weird cubbies and why can we reach through and I can like grab a backpack from a hook from inside or from outside in the classroom. And
So like
so
a whole backpack can go through. So these are not little cubbies.
these were like they would sometimes get locked out of the class and a high schooler would go through and unlock the class. And I said, that is not safe.
No, I'm sure
So
the high schoolers loved it, but still not
high
safe.
schoolers felt very cool, but it simply was too it was too easy access for a place where we had the tiniest of our people. So
Mhm.
that was what really sparked it for me was if this is how our building is set up, what do we need to do to actually make it safer physically? Because are there things we could do physically to protect our kids if we're going to keep with the cubbies? Like, can we build a wall or can we cover up the cubbies on one side because cubbies are helpful? So that's what really sparked it was
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
bare minimum. How do we
Yeah.
keep outside
Noticing.
from going into the classroom through a weird box?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is true for a lot of us that we're working in older buildings that were built without these considerations. And so we don't have the luxury of starting from scratch and having, building things into our existing facilities. We have to start with what we have. But I loved the word you used about entrusted, that our leaders have been entrusted and we have been entrusted with these kids. And I know when I talk to leaders about um, safety plans just don't feel exciting and they don't feel really relevant to the mission. Um, but I couldn't disagree more. I mean, these kids are coming and we have been entrusted with them. And this is where their ideas of God are being shaped from the very beginning. And so if we're leaving them open to experiencing harm in our church spaces, either just willingly letting things slide or ignorance or however it's coming about, we risk kids having these experiences that are ultimately going to shape how they view God. And that's something that I hope we're all willing to sit with that reality and take that seriously. So I love that word um that you used, and I love the cubbies. Oh, I bet every leader right now is picturing that one thing in their church that they're like, "Oh, those
Like
stinking puppies." Like they're
those are the things, yeah. And the hard part about safety policies, I think, whether they're like policies or like a best practice list, like whatever that looks like for a church, it's the worst thing to think about. Like this should be a safe place. We shouldn't have to think about what happens if I'm like a shooter is around, or what happens if we need to evacuate our building, or what happens if like we get locked out of a classroom, or what happens if we are one-on-one. Like those are hard and awful things to think about. And at the same time, it's so necessary because these are so like this is such a holy task
Yeah.
of caring for kids and caring for students. So it's the worst and it's a hard place to sit in for a long time. And at the same time, it's so important. And parents feel valued. Like this is not simply a write a policy and have it so that way you can cover all of your bases. It's
Right.
caring for people well.
Absolutely. Okay, so you saw the cubbies, you noticed the cubbies, then where'd you go from there?
I went through what policy we did have.
Okay.
And frankly, like I kind of started from scratch, but only because what we had was so long and also outdated. And so the what had originally been created was when the building was first built, or right around there. And it was like 30 some pages of like, this is what happens when you want to have a sleepover with kids. And I said, we're not doing that anyway. That's super outdated for what we're doing. We just kind of have to scrap it. There are a couple of pieces that are helpful, but we're just gonna have to scrap it. And so I read through what we had to try and salvage what was there because it was not bad work, it just is outdated.
Mhm.
Then I went to a few different friends who were also children's pastors and student pastors. And then I went to our denomination, and tons of denominations have access to like free resources on child safety and child safety policies. So I was looking through I honestly Googled church safety
Yeah.
policies and found a few that looked really helpful. And we went through and I like highlighted the things that I felt were important. And I went and I created a team. Part of Part of it was I created a team, part of it was like our safety team on Sunday mornings who take a lot of pride in keeping our building safe from like 9 to 10 a.m. Um, and so we created this team of how do we rewrite this policy to actually be helpful to us? And how do we create it something that's actually usable and not
Yeah.
just mumbo jumbo written on pages so we know what we kind of know what outside people want us to do to keep us safe. But what can we actually do to keep our kids safe and to keep our volunteers protected all at the same time? And so
Yeah.
I went through and I read so many child safety policies, and it went through ones from school districts and brought in teachers who had eyes for this already because they also know how to do wording a little bit better than I do. And
Sure.
so they like I originally was going to like type out this whole new thing, and then it was not going to work. Like everybody else has, why reinvent the wheel, you know? So I just was taking bits and pieces from other people. And we went to who else did we talk to? We talked to the scouts too for their safety policy because theirs has been revamped a lot in the past few years and it's been really fruitful for them. And so learning from people who have done it before. And then once we kind of picked what we knew would be really crucial for our community, we figured out the best wording and
Mhm.
how to like actually implement it in our spaces. So it took a little time, but we really wanted to make sure that what we were doing and how we were writing it was preventative and not necessarily reactive to
Absolutely.
harm. So like we were making sure that the things we were picking out were how do we prevent our kids from getting hurt, whether that's building a wall in front of the cubbies, or that's making sure we have two adults in a group chat with a student to make sure that a student is never really one-on-one with an adult unless they're in a super public space. So how do we prevent danger and harm or prevent our people from being put in dangerous situations? And those are what we focused on. And of course, we had some of the reactive, like, if this is reported to us, then this is what we do, or
Yep.
like
This is
that.
what next steps would look like. Yeah, that's fair. So what did once you had this policy? Which I like that you mentioned that there are policies written too. So you might be in a context where you have 40 hours a week and you can really do that process. If you're a volunteer leader and you have 2 hours, there are policies through your denomination that you can something's better than nothing. So don't feel like you're disqualified if you don't have the time to do that whole process.
Mm.
Um,
Well, and that's the value. Like we had people who, once I convinced them that this was really significant, um, no one was ever anti rewriting our policy, but I don't think people really understood the value. And so once they really did understand the value, they like were all in and we figured it out. But that is the benefit of having extra people.
yeah.
The like denominations have so many tools and other churches do, and
Yep.
everybody wants kids safe. So
Yep.
any policy is better than nothing. Like any steps we take towards keeping our kids safe is great.
Yep. Yep. So initially people are not excited about, I mean, I don't know anybody that just gets pumped about talking, maybe a handful of people that get pumped about talking about policy. But so that process of implementation, tell me about that. What did that look like in your context?
So in our team, we did a lot of like peer reviewing. So once it was finalized, I finalized, like once everything was all gathered together and we had the wording we thought we wanted, um, we brought teachers in, handed it off to the fire department because what, I mean, they know a lot more than we know about how to keep people safe. And so we handed it off to them and they approved it. Um, and we pulled from a lot of places. So really anywhere we pulled from, we asked for help from them again at the end. We also, and this is not necessary, but because of how our system was set up, we had an attorney look at it, which could be a helpful thing. It's just also not necessary if it's a policy or even best practices. Like you don't have to do any of that. But it was helpful to know like this wording could potentially create chaos. So anyway,
Yeah.
once we had it finalized and had really created what we had wanted our church to live into, we had trainings. And so we had trainings. I did a lot of individual trainings because of course this happened in the summer, so no one was around. No one was available to do it all at once. But I did a lot of individual trainings and then we had a document to sign at the end. So once everybody had read through it, they had to agree to it. And if they didn't feel like they could agree to it, then that was our natural time to find another way that they can serve.
Mhm.
Um, and I had my own reservations in our policy because we had, like the one that I mentioned was 2 adults and 1 student in a group chat, if or however many students, but there's always 2 adults in it. And I was like, that's gonna be really hard. I don't know if we should leave that in there. Like kids text me all the time letting me know when they're gonna volunteer, when they're not. Like that's gonna be so confusing. And but had to do it. And we found that it was actually way easier to implement some of those things that are a little more nitpicky. Um, Maybe nitpicky is not the right word. Things that are a little more specific than
Yeah.
others.
Yep.
Um, but it really took, I would say it took us a year to get into the groove of
Okay.
implementing.
Yep.
Because any step that we took towards implementing was better than nothing. And so, like, one of our priorities was always having 2 adults in a classroom.
Mhm.
That is still hard to do. Like, having enough volunteers for that to happen while also providing age appropriate lessons is
Mhm.
hard. And it also is so important to the team that created the policy that we put all of our effort into it. And so it was not a simple year of like implementing this new policy. And at the same time, we've seen the fruit of it. And um, yeah, so it was a lot of slowly reminding people that this is what we're doing, or reminding students, hey, if you text me individually, I'm going to respond with another adult to you.
Mm. Yeah.
And even that, like they were like, that's kind of weird, but we'll figure it out.
I
So
guess okay.
I
Yeah.
guess that will be fine. But it took time and it felt difficult, but at the same time, when I knew that we were meeting all of the expectations we had, it was exciting to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's like any culture change. When you're trying to create a new normal, it does feel clunky and awkward on your way to
Mhm.
just normalizing these practices. So that it makes sense that that year is kind of people are still figuring it out, and there's still it's not this instinctual response where this far out, it probably is second nature for them to add in another adult. Or I know some churches have just a designated Google Voice number, and that's just the accountability line. And so
Yeah.
there's a record of conversations, um, which sometimes it just takes some creativity too. That um, one church's solutions might not directly be the solution for the church over here. But if we're all kind of thinking together and getting creative about how do we keep kids safe and how do we keep, if this is the problem, there's probably multiple solutions that we can
Yeah.
think through. So it makes total sense that it was clunky, and change is never easy. It's never, even when it's good and even when it's for the benefit of kids, it still feels awkward and uncomfortable. So what
And
would, oh, go
I
ahead.
wouldn't even say like after a year we're perfect at either. Like there's just no way sometimes to have two adults all the time. Like it's just you're doing your very best, but you have backup plans in place. So I think that's what was really valuable too, is we were learning how to create safety nets
Yep.
after we had our policy in place because we really wanted those things to happen. And churches aren't like staffed like a school. Like the schools can have those big policies and churches can try really hard. And I still sometimes don't have enough volunteers in a nursery. Like that's just the reality. And
Yeah.
so there's always backup plans in place. And those are, of course, really specific examples, but there's just always, there are always many ways to keep kids safe. It's just always better to do something and to care
Yeah.
about it to a
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah. And I think that's good to know because it's, especially in smaller churches, when we are struggling to find volunteers, it's easy to feel like a failure of like, well, I can't even do this and I can't fulfill that policy. And then we just kind of throw everything out because it's just too hard. When yeah, something is better than nothing. And so even the awareness of, okay, this is best practice, but if we can't hit that, what are other ways that we can keep a door open or have, accountability other ways to make sure that leader and that student and everybody is in a safe environment. I think that's a great reminder. So as you're going through implementing, are there, if you could go back and do it again, what are you like, absolutely, this went so well, we would 100% do this again? What didn't work that you would tweak or adjust or totally change if you were to implement something like this again?
Yeah, I originally was ready to take the bull by the horns and do it myself.
Mm,
And I learned really fast that I am not an expert. Like I
yeah.
am not the one who can know everything about how to keep kids safe, nor should I be. Like we should be getting opinions of more people because there are so many angles to kid safety. Like I don't know if I can think of an example, but I know like as I was talking to my team, there were so many times where they're like, well, what if this happens in that system that you're building with however you're writing that? Then that's also dangerous. Like that's equally dangerous as to what we originally had. And so I like, in the beginning, I was like, that is my work. I've been thinking about this so long. I know how to do this. And I realized so fast that I don't. Like I am not the only one who can do a good job. And frankly, was doing my very best, but probably would have created something a little messy. And so we it was so helpful to have a team, even if they're like a volunteer team or even one other person, having extra eyes on something is so important as safety was so crucial. I can't even begin to explain like I was really ready to type up the whole thing and figure it out and install all the walls and like and like
Go with your tool belt.
yeah, I'm like, I'll figure out how to drywall. I'll do it. It's fine. But I really couldn't. Like that,
Yeah.
it simply can't be one person. Plus, safety is not done best alone. And so when we're thinking of safety policy things, whether that's like two adults, however, however we have our people safe, there's never a situation where the safest option is one person knows everything and no one else knows anything. Like that is never the safest way. And so creating a safety policy alone is not great. And it's also really hard. Like, I don't know how to best keep our students safe if I'm working just with kids, or like, I need the input of our student pastor. I need the input of our lead pastor who's had other experiences in their churches. And so I found value really fast in gathering other opinions, looking at other resources, um, looking at other denominations things too, because every denomination has been through different things,
Mhm.
which is sad and at the same time helpful to us as we can learn from it. So one source and one person was a mistake. And trying, I think the other mistake was trying to do everything all at once. It,
Oh,
we simply couldn't do everything all at once. I mean, I put the walls up. I did end up hiring someone to put walls in front of the cubbies. Uh, but that was like the first thing I did because I knew that if there were any emergency situation, that would be safer than anything.
mhm.
The safety policy came 2 years after that. Like there's a big gap in between there. And so I think knowing that we can't accomplish everything all at once, but any little step we can take to make sure people are caring for our kids really well and caring for their parents and caring for our volunteers really well and ways that I could do that better. I like we had to start from bare bones. Like,
Mhm.
what is our
Yep.
physical space like? And after that, everything else can come.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it makes sense that in this process of change culture that does take time. I mean, we are prone to go the easiest, fastest route, which we default to. I'll just do it myself and we'll get it done and move on. Um, but yeah, it is better to make it a longer process. But even in that, to pause and prioritize, okay, we see this gap right now. We can do something about that now. We don't have to wait until the process is finalized and it's been voted on by the church and we don't have to go through all that red tape to fix the cubbies. We can do that now. So
Mhm.
it's kind of this both and situation of if you have identified things, you can take action on those all the while you're having these really beneficial, fruitful conversations that are leading to a safer culture within your church. So I think that highlights the both and really well.
Yeah. And I was in another space and they had doors that were now I can't think of the name of them, but where they're cut in half so you can like the top opens and the bottom stays closed. And those doors were a saving grace for them because they couldn't always do that. So like trying that was a really easy solution before they could totally revamp their safety policy was like coming up with a way to use their backup plan that they'll eventually use for their safety policy in the end before the safety policy is through. Like
Yep.
using those backup plans, chances are you're not being unsafe right now. Like
Yeah.
chances are you're doing everything you can to be safe now anyway. So use that knowledge and understanding of how to
Yep.
keep it safe to then inform things later,
Yeah,
which was helpful.
absolutely. There's so many and even, baby gates, and there are ways to keep them where they're supposed to be, but keep sight lines open and things like that in really cheap, effective ways. So I love that conversation. Um, are there resources, are there places that you would point people if they're just getting started in this conversation? Organizations, trainings, things like that, that might be helpful.
I found a lot of value in honestly just Googling safety policies because everybody's is different. Like, I don't think I found a single one that had the same priorities. So it was interesting for me to learn from other churches who had different priorities than what we might have because everyone's goal is the same. And so why would they value A when I'm valuing B?
Right.
I or what am I missing if I don't have the same value in A? And so I learned a lot from other churches who had done this before. I also learned a lot through Ministry Safe. They have a lot of resources too. And I think they do cost money, but it is worth it even for a short amount of time or to kind of figure out where your background checks come from because they will often offer a lot of resources on how to keep people safe because that's what they want to. Um, so through stuff like that, I reached out to leaders in our denomination trying to learn more about safety policies. I did a lot of reaching out about um like CPS and how to best how after we have to make if we have to make a report, how do
Yep.
we follow that up? Like how do we care for families after and
Mhm.
or whatever situation it was. Like doing a lot of having just plain conversations with people who probably had more experience than I did, or knew a
Yeah.
little more, or had other harder experiences that they had told me about, so I could learn from that. Like it was
Mhm.
really just a lot of learning from conversations and from experience because this stuff we don't know what's best until it doesn't work. And that's the worst. We don't know. And we want to know so bad what works best until it doesn't. But sometimes it's just like that. And so learning from places who've had experiences who can teach us more. That's
Yeah.
where I found the most value for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And your answer just a tangential question that I know that you can speak to. What would you say to a leader who is intimidating to make a safety policy because they're intimidated by having to follow through on if something does happen and they have to make a call or they have to I know so many leaders are scared if they ever have to make a CPS call or report anything like that, and sometimes that fear can be paralyzing. So what would you say to that leader that's like, I just don't even want to think about it because it's too much. Is there any just little wisdom that you'd offer them?
I think knowing that these kids, I think using that word entrusted, like
Mhm,
we have been chosen to care for these kids. And if we can't, or if we don't want to, or we're scared to, then we need to call on a higher power for help. Like we need help and we can't do this alone. And so when I think about the CPS calls I've had to make, I have so rarely done them alone.
mhm,
Um, because it's scary
mhm,
and it feels like it could be so huge and like ruin so many things. And at the same time, CPS is intended to be helpful.
mhm.
And so like the intent of CPS is to make sure that families can stay together. Sometimes it doesn't happen like that, but that's the original intent. And so if we can do what we can to resource our families or resource the situation that we're hearing about with more tools and more resources, we want to do that. That's a good thing. And it doesn't take away the fact that CPS is scary. And
Yeah.
that's it is hard. And I don't think that there's a way around like that fear bubbling up of like, what if I'm wrong? Or what if I don't know what's going on? Or what if I just don't know everything that happens? Like, what if this is what is this? I don't know.
Yep.
It's there's always the safest option is to call,
Mhm.
even if it's hard. And
Absolutely.
you can always bring other people in. You can always bring someone else into the room to call or have someone like I haven't done it on Zoom before actually, but I'm sure you could have someone on the phone with CPS and like you and I could call together and we can
Mhm.
talk together or having someone else in your corner talking to CPS together. That's easier. It's
Yeah.
already easier.
Yep.
And knowing the kids and knowing that you want what's best for them, that's great. But at the same time, like if our job is mandatory reporter, then we do need to call.
Mhm.
It's hard.
I
I can
know, but it's still
like
part
it's
of the thing.
awful. It's the worst part. It's the worst.
It is. It absolutely is. I think too, in the calls that I've made that I've been scared to make, the scenario in my mind of whatever fallout for me, for the church, for relationships was it either didn't come to fruition like I was afraid it would, or it paled in comparison to the support that that family needed, either to be safe or to figure out whatever else was going on. And so, so I my encouragement to add to that is just it's so much more we need to do it because we need to do it, but our thoughts can kind of spiral and it kind of take us to a place that's just not helpful, and it's oftentimes a whole lot less there's a whole lot less to it than what we have built up in our head, especially in smaller churches where everybody knows everybody and it's that kind of family
Yeah.
dynamic. So, we can do the hard thing, we can make the call. It's always good to have a coach or a mentor that you can bring in and talk through. what to do in those situations.
And like we're in Colorado, so the Colorado mandatory reporter training is really clear
Mhm.
and really helpful. Like gives you good, like this is language you can use when you're on a call. Like here's a sample call that you can listen to. Like you some of my fear when I was first making a call was I don't know what to say. I don't know what people are going to ask me. And they have it all listed out. And so there's a lot of tools too to make it a little less intimidating so you know what you're walking into.
Absolutely. And we actually have a resource that I'll link in the description here that has every state you're in, we have that mandated reporter training. So you just have to click the link and it takes you right to it. So take the out of it, go through the training, get familiar with what that process actually looks like. Um, Kayleigh, thank you so much for this. Is there any final thoughts, final encouragements, things that you'd like to leave people with?
I don't think so. I other than like it is the hardest task I've had as a children's pastor and has been the most rewarding and fruitful to watch happen in our spaces because it was like some of it was so obvious with like the cubbies or whatever, but some of it was how do we make sure our kids feel safe too? And once
Mhm.
they knew that, they were all in. And so I th- it's worth doing, even if it's not an official policy, even if it's just a volunteer best practice, or even if it's a best practice just for us. Like doing it has was hard, and th tons of people have done it before us. Don't reinvent the wheel
Yeah,
for other people's things.
absolutely.
Like, look online for your local school district, like, they all have stuff. The fire department wants to be helpful, like, don't do this on your own,
Mhm.
and at the same time, still do it. Like, we
Yeah,
still to keep our we've been given a really important task, and our kids deserve safety, even
yeah,
if it's complicated and makes us a little nervous and feels like a very big undertaking and takes a long time to do. It's still so crucial. And it's I have found a lot of relief in knowing we're doing what we can, or at the very least trying our hardest to do what we can. And there's a lot of worry that was relieved because we knew what we were doing. And so it can be hard and it can be really good and fruitful at the same time.
yeah. Oh, aren't so many things that way? Yeah.
Isn't ministry like that?
It is. It is. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insight. We're going to link a ton of resources below, and so please feel free to take advantage and reach out to a coach. We have
Yeah,
coaches that want to walk with you, help you navigate this. But Kayleigh, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, we'll be back together shortly.
great.